It is my pleasure tonight to introduce you to one of the to an author who have published several bestseller books in the area of innovation and leadership. Mr. Rohit Bهرقافا is actually with us tonight. He traveled all the way from the U.S. To tell us about his story of non-obvious book. The book, actually, he just told me today that it will be available in Arabic in next month by the publisher Jarir Publishing. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Mr. Rohit.
About 5 years ago, I went to an event in Norway, and I heard the story of a Norwegian billionaire. His name's Christian Ringes. And he, like many billionaires, had a habit. And his habit was a collection of his that he was very, very passionate about. And he would tell anyone that he possibly could about this habit. And it was to collect these little bottles, right? And these little bottles are collectible items. They're filled with lots of different things, sometimes alcohol, sometimes other mixed drinks, things like that. And he's passionate about this. And he created a venue for all of these to put them in. And this venue is a museum. And the museum has his collection, and he's very passionate about his collection. The problem is the museum doesn't have a lot of meaning unless you put these things into a sort of experience for people. And the experience is a curated experience. It's a museum, so they curate the experience. And as I thought about what they did there, I realized that curating an experience is the way to create meaning, right? Every museum does it. You had this wonderful video talking about all of these experiences that you have here, and they're all curated by someone who's a storyteller. And the storytellers are the ones who put the meaning behind these. And so when I think about why that's important, I think about one of my favorite quotes from a visionary author. And his name's Isaac Asimov, science fiction writer, and that's what he's known for. And he said that I'm not a speed reader, I'm a speed understander. And being a speed understander is what I aspire to try and be. That's the secret that I spend a lot of my time trying to figure out how to do. Because there's a lot of temptation right now to try and be a speed reader. We have a lot of media that we're trying to read and pay attention to on the phone. We have more and more things that are distracting us and taking our attention. And if we're going to be better at consuming information, we can't try and consume everything. It doesn't work. We have to be able to see what's most important. We have to be able to understand what's most important. So my goal today is very simple. It's to give you some insight on what it takes to be able to predict the future. That's the title of the talk. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing. And when you think about this idea of predicting the future, it doesn't seem like something that anyone can do. It seems like maybe you have to have a PhD in research, you have to spend a lot of time being the sort of person that can learn how to predict the future. And what I found over and over as I spend more and more time with people around the world is that learning to predict the future is a learnable skill. It's something anyone can do. And it's based on having 5 habits, the 5 habits of trend curators, that's what I call it. And so what I'm going to share with you is what are those 5 habits? How can you use them yourself to learn to predict the future? And then what are some of the trends that we together need to pay attention to see how the future is unfolding for all of us? The key is seeing what other people don't see. And what you'll learn in the first habit of trend curation is that learning to see what other people don't see actually means picking your head up and paying attention and being more observant and realizing that that's something we're used to doing only in very, very specific times and not all the time. But we need to get better at doing that. Now, I put this in the lens of what I call a non-obvious trend. The title of the book, maybe it'll be different when it's translated into Arabic, but the title in English is non-obvious. And non-obvious, to me, means an idea that not everyone has already seen before. It's something different. It's something that is unexpected. It's something that describes an idea that people don't necessarily think about in the same way. And that's what we want to be able to uncover, because that is the key to predicting the future. So a non-obvious trend, the definition of a non-obvious trend is a unique, curated observation of the accelerating present. The accelerating present. What it means is that the future, the signs of it are already here today, if you know where to look. So the key to predicting the future isn't to guess at something that might happen in the future. The key is to see patterns in something that's already happening and predict whether it will accelerate, whether more people will be buying products in this one particular space, whether more people will be influenced by this type of media. Therefore, it's something that you should spend your time on. So the prediction is not about something that will happen or not. The prediction is about what will accelerate. And there's a methodology behind doing that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So when it comes to trends, there's three things I look for. Is it an idea that I can describe quantifiably? Is it accelerating? Is it causing more people to talk? Is it causing more businesses to change their model? And is it having an impact? Is it changing behavior? Is it changing what people buy? Is it changing what they believe? If those three things exist, then I call it a non-obvious trend. And what I'm going to do also today is take you behind the scenes and show you exactly how this comes together. Because every year I produce a new trend report. So that's the output of this research. The 2016 report comes out in the beginning of the year. The 2017 report will be out in January of next year. And I'm going to give you some trends from the 2016 report, which is now, and I'm going to give you a brand new trend from the 2017 report, which is not out yet. So that'll be a preview of something that hasn't even been released yet. So you'll be among the first group to see it because I just finished writing it. So it's very, very new. And when we think about these trends, the way that I often describe the usefulness of them is the same way that a telescope is useful to see something that you can already see right now. If it's a clear day and you go outside, you can see the moon, you can see the stars. But if you have a telescope, you can see it much more clearly. And that's what a trend delivers. It gives you the opportunity to see much more clearly something that you can already see, but you don't entirely have the picture of what it is and why it's useful. So if you have that picture, that makes a big difference because now you can start to say, how do I use this in my business to do something different? How do I use it if I'm starting a business as an entrepreneur to create a business that is what we call on trend, right? A business that's on trend is a business that is allowing you to take advantage of something that's already happening instead of asking people to do something that they have trouble doing. It's much better to have a business that's on trend because now you're riding the wave. If you've ever gone surfing or in the water, any sort of activities like that, you don't want to be going against the current, right? That's much harder. If you can go with the current, it's much better because now the current is helping you out. Same thing if you're going against the wind or with the wind, right? You want to be able to do that. So being on trend helps you go with the wind, with the water. That's good. That's what we want. Now, the easy thing to think with trends whenever we hear about them, and probably in the media, you're seeing some attention on trends right now because trends usually start by talking about industries. So someone says to you, here are the 5 financial services trends. Here are the 5 trends in oil and gas. Here are the 5 trends in healthcare, right? That's how we tend to think about trends. And when somebody stands there and they tell you, here are the financial services trends, you have permission in your head to say, well, I'm not in financial services, so I can stop listening to those, right? Because it's like the apples and the oranges. If I sell oranges, I don't care about the apples, or the other way around. And the challenge with thinking that way is that we shut ourselves off to new ideas and to innovation because we think in our head, that's not for me. That's not for me. So I can stop paying attention. Instead, I want to challenge you to think in this way, which is if you could take one thing and something else and put them together, maybe you can create something new and interesting and different. And this is an actual fruit in real life that people have made, and they sell it in some places. Right? This is real. But the idea of doing that is something that is in all of our power. Because what it allows you to do is take an idea that's working somewhere and apply it to an entirely new industry, to an entirely new space. That mentality is the innovator's mentality. That's what innovators do. That's what trend curators do. They take ideas and they apply them to different places that nobody else thought of. And now they have something new. They have something interesting. So that's what we want to teach ourselves to do. Now, the other thing people think when it comes to trends is that I will search for the needle inside of the haystack, right? That the trend is sitting there. If I just search hard enough and I move enough things, maybe I can find it. And instead of doing that, I think that's completely backwards. I think if you spend all of your time looking for a needle in a haystack, you might find it, you might not find it. But if you spend your time gathering hay together, and then you put the needle in the middle of it, you can decide what the trend is going to be. That's the method that I teach people. That's what I call the haystack method. And if you think about this idea of collecting ideas, it's similar to the idea of collecting frequent flyer miles if you're a traveler. When you collect frequent flyer miles, how do you use them? Do you take a flight to Dubai and then you collect your miles and then you use them right away? No. You save them, right? You save them until you have enough miles to go somewhere that you really want to go or that you can pay for your entire family, and then you go on vacation. What if you could save ideas the way you save frequent flyer miles? Not to use right now, but to use later when they're more useful. Do you have a way of doing that? Could you look at your notes from something like tonight or something you went to 3 weeks ago, read those notes and remember, oh, that's what I was thinking? Or do you take your notes and say, I don't know why I wrote that down. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't even know where the notes are because I put them in a piece of paper and I left them in my other bag and now I lost them. So we lose ideas all the time, which is the worst because if you think about it, you spent your time, you came here, you sat here, you were listening to me. Maybe in the course of a 45-minute talk, you wrote down 1 or 2 things that you thought were important enough to write down. And then 3 weeks later, they're gone. What a waste. We have to get better at curating those ideas, saving them like we save frequent flyer miles, right? If we can, then we can start to put the pieces together. So I'm going to give you a way to do that. I'm going to give you a very specific formula for how to do that. The haystack method that I mentioned has 5 steps. And the 5 steps of the haystack method, and don't worry, I'll go into this in more detail. And by the way, I'll make sure that you have a soft copy of all of these slides afterwards. So don't worry if you can't quite capture everything, or if you want to write down something down, you're welcome to. If you want to not write and just listen and have the slides after, that's also a possibility for you. They also told me to mention that these are for questions, these next to your seat. So maybe you already know that if you've been here before. But if you would like to ask a question, we can use those for that. So this is the haystack method, the 5 steps. And I'm going to go through each one of these steps in detail. But what I want to do along with that is I want to show you what that looks like. So I've been doing my annual trend report for 7 years now. So the new version, the 2017 version, is the 7th year. And every year I predict 15 new trends. So I wrote a book in probably the most unintelligent way that I possibly could, which is I wrote a book where I have to rewrite it every year, which is not smart as an author. It is not smart at all, let me tell you, because it causes me to do a lot of extra work. And the book, in terms of length, is about 65,000 words, which is an average length for a business book. And every year I rewrite about 25,000 words of that book. So about 33%, right? About 35% of the book is brand new every year, republished over and over for the last 7 years. So it's challenging because I have to go back, I have to think about what could make this book better, I have to think about new trends. And the temptation to think is, well, these old trends, they disappear, right? Because nobody wants the old trends. If I'm sitting here with you in November telling you about 2016 trends, probably you're thinking in your head, I don't really want the 2016 trends. I want the 2017 trends, right? Those are the better ones. Those are the new ones. But what happens with trends is if they're well predicted, new trends don't replace old trends. New trends are interesting because they're newer. But what happens with new trends is they're a little more non-obvious. They're a little bit more challenging because we haven't thought of them. But if a trend is well predicted in January of 2016, it becomes more important by November. More people start paying attention to it. It becomes a little bit more obvious, perhaps, but it becomes even more relevant. So every one of the trends that I'm going to share with you today, and I'm going to share 7 specific trends, have been selected for you based on conversations with the team, based on the workshops that we've been doing throughout the week this week, and we just spent an entire day with 20 really, really interesting people who all have come from different businesses within Kuwait, talking about their challenges and talking about how to apply them. So we've selected 7 trends that are specific for you. But the idea is that they're not old, they're current for you. Now, that doesn't mean every trend I've predicted over the course of 7 years has been good. I've made mistakes. So the other thing that's in the book is an honest assessment of whether the trend turned out the way I expected or not. So every trend has an analysis behind it. There's an entire part 3 of the book. I think it's part 3 or part 4. I mixed them this year. But there's an entire part of the book that analyzes all of the previous trends and says, did this trend come true? Was it good? Was it well predicted? Or was it not well predicted? So there's a lot of analysis behind the trends. There's a lot of methodology behind it. But the other thing I did over the course of these 7 years is I started taking photos of my process, of how this works. So as I take you through the 5 steps of the haystack method, I'm going to show you what it looks like for me with photos that I've taken with my phone. So this is not theoretically how you should do it. This is actually what it looks like, just to inspire you in terms of seeing behind the scenes. Because I think a lot of times what happens, and I listen to a lot of authors talk about their books. I go to a lot of events every year. And a book is a beautiful thing because you can hold it and it's done. It's not like a website where you can keep adding stuff to it and editing it, and it never really goes away, right? A book, once you finish it, it's finished. But a lot of times when you see the book, you don't really realize the process that went into it. So I want to take you behind the scenes and show you what that process looks like. The first piece is books. So there's lots of different books that I order and that I read, and I gather ideas from books. I rip things out of magazines. And when I rip things out of magazines, they're articles, they're stories, I print them off of the internet, and I spread them out across my house. And this green thing in the corner is one of my kids' toys, so it's not a special tool that I use for, somebody noticed that in the picture. They said, wow, what's that? Is that some gadget that I can buy? I said, no, that was my kid's toy. It was in the picture, I didn't realize, right? I take notes, lots of different notes from lots of different events, and I'm saving these ideas. And I always have with me my notebook, which looks a little like a passport. It's about the size of a passport, but trust me, it's a notebook. And the thing that I do in this notebook is I always put next to things that I remember, I put a little box. And inside of that box, I put what I want to remember about it. So if, for example, after the session we talked and you recommended me a book, you said you should really read this book, I'll write the book in my notebook, and next to the name of the book, I'll put a square and I'll write book, the word book, inside of that square. So by the end of a month or 2 months or however long it takes me to fill up the book writing this small, because my handwriting is quite small, so I fit more things in the book, every book that somebody's recommended to me for the last month or 2 months has a little square next to it that says book. So now, if I happen to be in a bookstore or I happen to be online ordering books, I can see every book everyone recommended to me for the last 2 months and I can order them all at once. People recommend books all the time. But do you have a method for going back and looking at every book someone told you about for the last 2 months, 3 months, 4 months at once and ordering all of them? Probably not, right? Because we don't think about taking our notes in that way. But what I'm doing is I'm saving my notes to be useful later, like the frequent flyer points. Because somebody telling me about a book right now is kind of useful, but I'm not ready to order the book right now because here I am, I'm talking to you, right? I can't pull out my phone and order the book. That would be rude. And by the time I get home, I forgot about it. But now, 2 months later, when I happen to be in the bookstore, now I'm ready. But I don't always have the information with me. So we have to get better at collecting the information. When I read books, this is how I read them. I put little tabs next to interesting ideas. so that I can save it, and when I put the book back on my bookshelf, I'm saving what the interesting ideas are. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is very, very bad for an author to say, but I'm going to give you permission to do something that probably none of your professors and definitely no authors have ever done. And the permission is to not read an entire book, just read the first part of it, and then stop. It's okay. Because a business book is not like a novel. You can read the first 3 chapters of a business book, you can get the idea of the business book, and you can get 80% of the value that you're going to get from that book. And what we learn in school is when you start a book, what do you have to do? Right? Finish it, of course, right? You can't start a book and not finish it. And so we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to start a book, and then we have to finish it, and therefore what ends up happening, we make it through less books. So we get less ideas. Why would you want less ideas? Don't you want more ideas? Of course you do. So if you read a book, you get the idea of it, you get the value from the book, you can stop. It's okay. And if you start reading a book and you don't get a good idea from it, and it's not valuable, don't finish it. It's okay. Don't finish it. I'm giving you permission. I'm an author. I've written books before. You have to finish my books. But other people's books, don't finish them if you don't find value, right? Because your time is too valuable. Your time is too valuable. So make your choices based on maximizing your time. And when you do read a book and you put it back on your bookshelf, make sure that you do everything you can to make that experience of reading it so useful that if you pulled that book off your shelf 5 years from now, you would be able to remember what was most interesting about it. This method allows you to do that, because I can pull these books off of my shelf 5 years later. Because we keep books for a long time, right? Books that we enjoy, not all books, but some books we keep on our bookshelf for a long time. And I have a way bigger bookshelf than most people because I use these books for research and all sorts of different things. And I love books, so I keep them. But I have to make them useful for me. Otherwise, it's not valuable. The other thing I do, and I saw a few of you doing this, is I take photographs of slides from speakers and presenters. If you've ever been in a meeting where you have been listening to a speaker and you're taking your notes, and maybe you have a notebook like this, right? And they have 3 bullet points, and you write down bullet point number 2, and then what happens? They switch their slide, and now you didn't get the 3rd one. And your notes say 2 bullet points of 3 amazing ideas, but you didn't get the 3rd one. And sometimes they give you the slides, and sometimes they don't, and it's so frustrating, isn't it? So frustrating. But if you took that phone out of your pocket or out of your bag, which is always with you, right? We don't go anywhere without our phone, and the quality of the cameras are very good, and all you have to do is take that phone out and take a photo of the slide. Now, some speakers say, don't do that. But in most business conferences, people do that all the time. And as long as you sit in the front half of the audience, even in this room, probably in the back, you could still kind of make out what the slides are, right? It's a great way to take notes without actually writing anything down. Saves your time. Again, very, very good way of taking notes. So save ideas by taking photos. It's okay. It's a good way of taking notes. Now, once I start gathering this information, I put it all together, then I move to step 2 of the haystack method, which is aggregating, starting to find combinations and intersections between these ideas, putting pieces together, saying this story over here might relate to this story over here, so I'm going to group them together in a way that might be useful. This is what it starts to look like when I put all the groupings of all the possible trends. And usually when I'm going through this process, I have an end point in mind, and my end point is to find 15 trends, right? That's my goal. And the 15 trends can't just be any 15 trends. They have to be in 5 categories, which are the 5 categories I always have in the book. So the first category is culture and consumer behavior. Second category is marketing and social media. Third is economics and entrepreneurship. Fourth is media and education. And the 5th is technology and design. So I'm looking for 3 trends in each one of those categories to publish in the report. And by the time I do this process of aggregating, I usually have between 70 and 80 possible trends, things that could be trends. So now I have to refine further, right? Because not all of these things are going to be trends. And one of the things that people ask most often is, what's the difference between a trend and a fad? What's the difference between something that will stay around and something that will be a spike but then go away again? The difference is you have to find examples of something across multiple industries. And when I show you some of the trends from this past year's research, what you'll see is there's examples from around the world. There's examples from different industries. And when you start to combine them together, you get what I would consider and describe as a non-obvious trend. That's what you end up with. But you have to work harder, because if you just do the surface work, you end up with these 70 things that could be trends, but you haven't actually gone to the next step. So the third step is naming. Now, one of the things that we often hear about naming is you never name something unless you're going to keep it, right? Because if you name it, you get emotionally attached to it. And once you become emotionally attached to it, you can't throw it away. Right? I used to joke with my wife that when we were naming our two kids, because I was a marketing guy, I said, let's talk about branding. She said, it's not branding. These are kids. We're naming them. I said, yeah, but that's their name for the rest of their lives. It's the same as a brand, isn't it? It's as important as naming a brand. But naming is super important because the words that we use are very, very important for how we describe ideas. So spending the time naming something is critical. But what naming also does is it gives you a way of describing what the idea really is. Now, it is hard because at this point you will have to start throwing things away. But thinking about words, and this is literally the way that I actually write down words and think about the naming of the different trends, really helps you to figure out what is the idea really and how do these things fit together between ideas. Now, the fourth step is very, very important for distilling things, because this is about finding one idea over here, finding another idea over here, and saying, if we elevate, right, if we make our thinking bigger, these two things actually fit together. So a lot of times what will start happening is you'll say, well, here's a small idea over here, here's a small idea over here. But when we put the pieces together, then we start to create something that's a bigger idea, that could be a bigger trend. So elevating is very, very important as the next step. Elevating starts to lead to what trends could be. I use different color coding for what trends could be for different trends as part of the report. And then the last step is proving. And so this is what the actual writing process looks like. This is the point when I start moving into actual writing. So up until now, the only thing I've been doing is capturing ideas, aggregating things back and forth, moving magazine articles around, researching, talking to people, interviewing people, capturing things in my notebook, ripping things out of my notebook, hopefully having some usefulness because I put those little boxes next to everything that I did, putting tabs in the books. Now I start doing the writing. And when I'm doing the writing, now I'm looking for research and more examples and proving. I'm trying to put it into a format that makes sense. This is what the whole manuscript starts to look like. As I start to map it out, I get help to try and refine some of the trends, and this is the last stage, right? This is the final stage. The output of all of this, as I mentioned, is a report that comes out every year. And the report features 15 trends, and it has since the beginning. But in 2015, I did something a little bit different, which is instead of just producing the trend report, I also created an entire first part of the book that was about how to do this for yourself. So a lot of the content I've shared with you just now in terms of how to do it, that only came out in 2015. Before then, I would just share it privately in my classes that I teach, or I would share it with groups that were bringing me in for the workshops, but I didn't really have it publicly anywhere. I didn't teach it in any way that was out there publicly. Now I have that as a part of the book, and every year, the part of the book that stays the same is that part, the part that talks about the process. The part that changes are the 15 trends each year. So that's the format of the book. That's how the book is put together. That's how it works. But I've talked in abstract about the trends, and I promised you that I would share some of the actual trends with you. So what I'm going to do for each one of these, and as I mentioned, there's 7 of them that are specifically selected for you, is I'm going to tell you the trend, I'm going to give you some examples of it, and then I'm going to try and make it actionable for you. And I'm going to make it actionable by giving you what I call a stealable idea, which is exactly that. An idea for using the trend that you can steal, use in your business tomorrow, to try and change the way that you do business, or use in your next effort, your next venture, if you're trying to start something. on the side, because I know it's very common for people to have their job during the day and then start something else, whatever that something else is. So maybe the idea will be more useful for the something else than it will be for the day job, either way. So let's talk about the trends. The first one, and this is one from the new report, is what I call desperate detox. Desperate detox is the idea that as more and more media comes and influences us in many ways, we're seeking new ways to simplify. We're seeking new ways to relax, to just get away from it in any way we can, whether it's turning those devices off or having some sort of blockers on it, or just finding some moment of calm away from the technology. And so sometimes we're finding it in very unique, different places. This is one place. Through a television station that first came out in Norway called Slow TV, that's now syndicated by Netflix to many, many other countries, where you can put this episode on, and I think I can call it an episode, and it's 8 hours of logs in a fireplace burning. Just that, nothing else. Or 8 hours of watching a train just go slowly through the Norwegian mountain, and that's it. Or there's a camera mounted on front of a ship that's going through the ocean, and all you see is the ocean for 12 hours. Or 16, I think. I can't remember. They extended it, and that's it. And people who watch these things talk about how calming it is because nothing happens. And that's okay. And when something does happen, when that log is burning in the fireplace and it's been on for 3.5 hours, and then from the side you see a stick come and somebody pokes that log, and then the stick's gone, and then it's the same for another 3 hours, that moment when that stick poked the log is exciting. Because something happened, and it was that little something. And when people watch this, they report that they're just waiting for that one little thing, because when it happens, you think, oh, something happened. And it's satisfying. It's deeply satisfying in a very strange, very, very strange way. Because it's not everything happening at once. It's not clutter. It's not media all in your face all the time. It's the exact opposite. And sometimes that's what people want. They're desperate for it. There's a movement in Spain called Eating Without Noise, where 5-star Michelin restaurants are saying, we believe that we need to create a more quiet experience so people can enjoy the food. So the restaurants say, we'll train our waiters to take the plates away more softly. They won't clank all the dishes together. People who come into the restaurant agree to speak more softly. And if they're not, somebody will come and say, excuse me, sir, can you please speak a little more softly? We're in a quiet restaurant. Because they realize that sometimes having more quiet in a restaurant allows you to have a better experience. So there's an entire movement behind this called Eating Without Noise for some restaurants. There's travel and tours that talk about digital detox. So there's tours by tour companies where when you sign up for the tour, they say, we're going to take you for 5 days to an amazing place in the world, and you're going to give us your phone and give us your cameras, and during that entire 5 days, you're not going to have a single photo. No status checking, no Facebook updates, no Instagram, no Snapchat, nothing. You're just going to be there. And that's the point of the tour. Can you imagine going on vacation for 5 days with not a single photo? What? Not posting anything on social media? Right? I mean, you don't have to be a millennial to feel really, really anxious about that, right? You could be anybody. And imagining that is hard. But just think about the potential transformative nature of a trip like that, where you didn't have a single record except for what you saw with your own eyes, except for what you remembered with your own mind. What would that do to your travel experience? If you could walk past something knowing that if you didn't pay attention to it in that moment, you'd never remember it because you wouldn't have a photo. And people who go on trips like this report that it's a transformative way to travel because they're paying attention to everything in a way that they never would have if they could just walk by. Oh, awesome, rainbow, click. Oh, interesting, here's another great store, click. Here's another place I can check into, click. And you just walk past and you forget about them entirely. And what happens when you go back from a vacation like this? You look through your photos and you're telling somebody about the places you've been, and here's this amazing restaurant we went to, and here's, oh, I don't remember what that is. And here's something else, and oh yeah, I don't remember that. But you took a photo of it, you were there. but you don't remember because your mind was checked out, right? Your mind wasn't paying attention. There's healing holidays, same idea. So the stealable idea behind this is, can we simplify, right? Can we simplify the experience? Because if we can simplify the experience, then we can make it more emotionally powerful. So this is valuable whether you're the consumer of the experience, in the case of the people taking the tours, or whether you happen to be providing that experience as the business. Is there a way you can simplify the business for your customers to allow them to have that detox moment? Second trend, strategic downgrading. Strategic downgrading is the idea that sometimes we prefer the earlier, less technologically friendly version of something because it just worked better for us in some way. So there's farmers in places across the world that have access to these beautiful, amazing tractors and farm equipment that's connected to GPS satellite data, and it tells you about the weather patterns and what the crops have been in a certain place and what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past. And they're just beautiful pieces of technology. The problem is when they break, the farmers have to wait 5 days for the IT engineer to come and fix it. And the previous tractor they have all the parts and they can fix it by themselves in their shed in 2 hours, and they can be back at doing the work that they need to do. And none of them can afford to wait 5 days with equipment that doesn't work. So what are they doing? They're taking this brand new equipment, they're returning it, and they're saying, I want the old tractor, because at least I know how to fix it. I know it doesn't have the GPS data, I know it isn't as great as the new one, but it works for me when I need it to work. And therefore, I choose the downgraded version. Right? There's a phone called the Black Phone that switches off all location data, all tracking, and allows you to just use the basic elements of the phone. Not be tracked, not have all of the different things that happen when you log into Facebook or any of these platforms, and you can just ghost yourself. Or sometimes, to use a Star Trek reference, they call it cloaking, right? If you recognize the Star Trek reference. So you can cloak your behavior and just use your phone the way a phone would work, as opposed to a smartphone that has all of these other things that sometimes aren't quite that smart. Print books were supposed to be dead. Everybody's supposed to be reading digitally. And yet, worldwide, the trend we've seen in the sales of print books is that they went down, and now they've kind of slowed, and they're actually going back up. Thanks in part to books like print coloring books, adult coloring books, which is a huge trend across the US and Europe, and youth fiction books. Youth fiction books. So when I talk to my 7-year-old and I say, do you want to read this book digitally, where it has voices and animation and awesome pictures and you can flip back and forth, or do you want the other book? He says, Daddy, I want the real book. The real book, which is the physical book that you hold, that you read at nighttime when you're going to bed. Right. We think sometimes ebooks are for young people. Print books are for old people who still need that thing because they can't see the digital screen that well. But here's a 7-year-old saying, I want the print book. Right? This is not a generational choice where young people choose digital books. In fact, they've surveyed young people in Scandinavia. They did a survey of 10th graders. And they said, if you could learn these principles from a textbook, or if you could learn them from a digital book, which one would you prefer? More than 90% of the 10th graders said, I prefer the book, the physical book, to learn this particular thing from. Right? So this is not an old, young thing. But sometimes we think it is, because people choose the old version, the book, the thing they can hold, because in some cases it's better. Not every case, but in some cases it's a better experience. This is a guy who launched an entire movement around the quest to allow people to fix their technology as opposed to throwing it away when it doesn't work. And one of the things that he noticed was the biggest barrier for technologically oriented people, right? So geeks and hackers and people like that who want to fix stuff is they get a device like the iPhone. And the iPhone, you can't open it because it has special screws. And the special screws, nobody has the screwdriver. It's called a pentalobe screw. So it's not an ordinary screw. So he said, well, I'm going to start manufacturing the screwdriver. Because then people can just buy the screwdriver online and they can open their phone. And maybe they can fix it, maybe they can't. But at least they can open it. And that's what he started doing. And now that screwdriver became a bestseller. Because there's so many people who, when they have an old phone, wanted to be able to open it. Or maybe they could find a new battery and they could replace it themselves, even though the company didn't want them to. Right? Retro media, popular in many different places. People actually go in and buy vinyl music, right? Records, old type of music. But now it's coming back. This game, the Game of Thrones, this game looks like games looked when I was a kid. We know that the graphics are much better with video games today. And yet, sometimes people choose games that look like this on purpose. Right? Just yesterday, the Nintendo Classic Controller came out, which has all of the old Nintendo games I used to play when I was a kid. And now it's a brand new product. And it's predicted to be a bestseller that people won't be able to buy because it'll be sold out, completely sold out. In fact, I think day one, November 11th, when it first came out, totally sold out. And it's all the old games loaded onto the controller, the old style controller, the thing that people who are around my age, around 40 years old, around 41, people of that age, like that's what they remember from their childhood, and that's what they're buying because they want that experience. And all the new stuff, it's too complicated. My kids have the new video games, and I lose because it's so complicated. Right? I used to have 2 buttons and a controller. That was it. These things have 8 buttons, and you have to use all your fingers. I can't do that. That's way too complicated. Now, they love it because they always win, so good for them. But I like the retro one because it was easier. Sports are being abbreviated, right? So you have the short cricket matches. You have golf matches where they say just play 9 holes. You don't have to play all 18, right? We can downgrade the experience a little bit. We can make it shorter to fit our lifestyles, and that's okay. So the stealable idea here is, what if we could give people a downgraded mode? My Samsung phone, the non-exploding Samsung phone, has a downgraded mode. And the downgraded mode allows me to save my battery power. So when I have 8% battery life left at 8 p.m., like now, I need that phone to last for another few hours before I get home. So I can switch to power saving mode. And power saving mode turns my screen one color, so there's no more color screen. It turns off all sorts of features except for what Samsung thinks is most urgent, most critical. So I can make phone calls, I can text people, and I can go on Facebook, which are the 3 most critical things, according to Samsung, that I need to do on my phone. Everything else is switched off, right? But that downgraded mode helps me take my 8% battery life and make it till the end of the day. Because at 8 o'clock, when your battery's about to die, wouldn't you rather have your phone at least be available for texting and give up all of the other stuff? Sure you would. So why not give people that option? Because they'll take it, and they'll find huge value in it, in the right situation. Third trend, branded utility. Branded utility is the idea that we can create marketing that's useful for people. And if we can create marketing that's useful, then it has a lot of value, and people will share that. They'll find it valuable, and they'll share it. So Weber is a company that makes barbecue grills, and they're sold everywhere in the world. And they do a great job of educating people about what sort of grill they should buy. So when I was in the market for a barbecue grill for my home, I didn't know if I should buy a charcoal grill or a gas grill. And it is a religious choice. And I don't think I'm overestimating when I say religious, because people are very, very deeply, strongly held beliefs about which kind is better. So the first thing I did is what? I went to Uncle Google, right? And Uncle Google told me that I should buy a gas grill for these reasons and a charcoal grill for these reasons. And there's lots of information. But I found a PDF. And the PDF said, how to buy a grill. Perfect. So I took my PDF and I printed it out, and it was 7 pages, and I started reading about gas grills and charcoal grills, and the last page of the PDF is a checklist. And the checklist says, print this out, check off the things that are important to you, and then take it to your dealer, because people don't buy a grill online, right? It's a huge item. So you do your research online, and then you walk into a local store and you buy one. That's how people buy it. So I printed this out, I took my checklist, I drove over, and then I walked into the store, and I gave my checklist to the person, and I said, here's what I'm looking for. The guy looks at my checklist, he says, come with me, sir. He takes me straight over to the Weber grill section, and he says, this is the Weber grill you should buy, because guess who wrote the PDF? Yeah, Weber grills. So they answered my question in the moment when I had my question. Therefore, they provided utility. Therefore, they sold me the grill. That's how content marketing works, right? If you've heard about content marketing, that's content marketing. It's very smart content marketing. And it works because they answered my question. In the moment when I was looking for a grill, they didn't tell me how I could get $50 off or a discount on the grill. They didn't tell me about the amazing new feature they have to allow me to cook whatever I'm cooking at the perfect level. Because at the moment when I'm starting to look for a grill, I don't even know what I want. So how can you convince me that a discount is a good thing when I don't know what I'm buying? You can't. You have to answer my question, right? That's what utility is. That's how utility works. Brands are starting to create magazines to allow people to have that deeper experience, to allow them to get information, to educate them about what they can do. All sorts of sports brands are taking this information and trying to create utility around tracking everything that you do, from walking to breathing to sitting to sleeping, tracking all of that information because they want you to buy more of their gear, and they're trying to provide value for you when you buy the gear. In the financial industry, you're seeing the same thing. Acquisitions, trying to create more value around helping people understand their finances. How much money do they have? How much do they need? How much should they be saving? Can they visualize the money that they have? Where are they spending it? How much are they spending? Should they be spending less over here, more over there? All of these are ways of trying to add utility to give people value so that they find enough reasons to buy more things, to stay with you as a customer, to be loyal. So the stealable idea here is answer questions unexpectedly. Hilton has an entire Twitter account where they answer people's questions about travel, even though those people probably aren't staying at a Hilton. So somebody can arrive in a city and say, I need a recommendation of a great restaurant. And they have a team on Twitter that will actually respond to that and say, you might want to go to this restaurant or that restaurant. Why? Because they're trying to be helpful. And the philosophy behind that is if we're helpful, maybe people will stay with us next time. Maybe they'll think of us next time. Maybe they won't. But we want to be as helpful as we can. That's the new mentality behind this trend. Okay, fourth trend. This is in the B2B space. And in the B2B space, what's the most important thing with marketing? The most important thing is targeting, right? Because in B2B marketing, we have to reach a very specific audience. Because if we don't reach the right audience, they won't care about our message. Because we're not selling our products to everybody. We're only selling it to a very, very specific audience. So that's who we need to reach. That's what we think. The thing is, in B2B marketing, we're starting to see people go beyond that. So this is a professional chef, an English chef, who hosts a show on TV called Restaurant Impossible. And Restaurant Impossible is a show where he fixes restaurants that are broken, that don't deliver great food, that don't deliver great service. He has a team that comes in and redesigns the restaurant. He redesigns their menu. He retrains their staff. He sometimes says, you need to fire this person and that person, and you'll have a great restaurant in 2 days. So they do the whole thing in 2 days. And as part of the 2-day process, one of the things he says is you need a better supply management system. Because a lot of these restaurants, what they're doing is they're sending people to the local grocery store, and when they run out of something, they go and they run to the store and buy more of it, which is a very inefficient way to run a restaurant. You should have your food delivered and order the proper amount of food so that you have enough. So the people that sponsor his show are a company that delivers food for restaurants. Total B2B. Consumers can't buy food from this company. It's called Cisco. Not the Cisco for technology. It's Cisco, like this Cisco. So their entire audience is restaurant owners. Now, this show is watched by millions and millions of people, including me, and I don't own a restaurant. But you know who else watches this show? At 2 a.m., when reruns of the show are on? People who came back from their restaurant owners, exactly. So they know restaurant owners are watching the show. They also know that millions of people who aren't restaurant owners are watching the show. But the philosophy, the B2Beyond philosophy is, as long as we hit the restaurant owners, as long as we reach our target audience, which is this many people, it's okay to reach these people also. That's not bad targeting, because you're still reaching your audience. In fact, that's great targeting, because all these people will tell any restaurant owners they know. So you have word of mouth coming back in. Same philosophy from GE. Right? Most of us will not buy products directly from GE unless you're investing in turbine engines and huge factory plants or things like that. But they advertise about how amazing the company is to work for because you might send somebody there to work. Caterpillar makes heavy machinery, heavy equipment. They have a series of YouTube videos where they show the machinery playing things like this game of Jenga. If you're familiar with the game of Jenga, you pull the blocks out until the whole thing tips over. That's the game. Just try and pull out as many blocks as you can. And what they're showing is their heavy machinery has such control, such dexterity, that they can actually play this game. And millions of people who are never going to buy this product, right, who are not in the target audience to buy the product at all, will watch the videos. And they'll share it with other people. Right? I don't know if you saw this video. Yeah, so this was Jean-Claude Van Damme standing between two trucks, and the trucks start off next to each other, and then slowly they move apart, and he does what they call an epic split, and this is as far as I can go, so I'm not going to go any further than that. But he does that between two trucks, and it's a TV ad. And at the end of the ad, they say, Volvo, we have dynamic steering. What dynamic steering means is that they can keep these trucks exactly next to each other. Right? So the whole ad is about a feature on a truck that people will never buy, most people. And yet, millions of people watch this ad, and they think in their head, wow, Volvo makes really precise technology for trucks, which is great if I'm in the market for a truck, but it's also really interesting for anybody who's not, because they reach these people as well as their target audience. And that's powerful. Same thing with this guy, who is a consumer-friendly guy who talks about glass. So this company sells glass for windows. And he talks about why you should have glass that has certain inert gases in between two plates of gas, and why it's important. And he makes it consumer-friendly for people, so that now there's a way for interior designers to explain why they're choosing one glass versus another, builders to explain why they're choosing one glass versus another, with this guy who's very consumer-friendly, explaining something that's not a consumer-friendly topic. So the stealable idea here is make your message simpler, not dumber, right? Make your message so that it resonates for more people. Make it so that it's more interesting for people. And then people will pay attention. All right, fifth trend, virtual empathy. Virtual empathy is the idea that now we can use virtual reality to create more empathy for situations that usually we wouldn't really be able to understand. So VR devices are everywhere. We can have VR devices in all sorts of situations. Stanford Human Interaction Lab created an experience where you can be a cow and experience what it's like to be a cow. And you could literally crawl around, and you have the helmet on, and you're watching that. Right? Clouds over Sidra, you may have seen this, was an experience where you can experience what it's like to be a refugee. And they put you in the middle of the camp, and you can actually see that experience from that point of view. This is an aging suit that allows you to experience what it's like to be 30 years older than you are right now, no matter what your age is. And they put the helmet on, they put the suit on, and you can feel what it's like to be older. So you can empathize with people who are older. This is another one for pain relief for burn victims, where they put it on and you can actually imagine that you're in a different place, so maybe you'll feel less pain through these very, very painful treatments that burn victims have to have and they can't get out of. So it helps them to lessen their pain in some way. Here's one from the Guardian newspaper in the UK, where you can experience what it's like to be in solitary confinement as a prisoner. So you can experience that form of punishment and what it's actually like. A little bit of what it's like, not exactly what it's like. So the stealable idea here is create your own testing lab. How many people have tried some sort of virtual reality so far? Okay, so maybe a third of the room. This is not an expensive technology to try anymore. It used to be. Now it's not. So take your time to find a place to try it. Sometimes you can even go into a retail store and try it. It's a very powerful experience, and it gives you a chance to see a totally new form of media that's now just starting to emerge. So find some time to try it. Sixth trend, in-sourced incubation. This is the idea that more innovators are being brought into companies, and we're creating spaces for those innovators to come up with new ideas, to do new, interesting things. So you have all of these content studios, all of these media publications now have a content studio where they produce content for companies as a part of their business model. Because they've all said, we have the editors, we have the producers, we have the designers, we have the writers, we have the photographers. Why not take that whole team of people, create a studio, and actually use that to create content for other people instead of just our own content? This is what some of the innovation labs look like in lots of different places. Right, here's one in Australia. Again, an innovation lab from a bank. This is Coca-Cola's program, bringing entrepreneurs in-house. This is the Marriott program for culinary entrepreneurs, to bring them in-house and have them try out things. This is Wendy's, a fast food restaurant, trying out new kiosks and an entire innovation lab around that. This is Unilever's project to try and bring entrepreneurs into the company and create new ideas and bring new things out. This is Westfield Labs that builds shopping malls out of in Australia and lots of other places, trying new retail experiences. This is another retail experience. So there's lots and lots of examples of this. I have another presentation that probably has another 20 examples in lots of different industries. So there's no shortage of examples of companies that are trying to do this. And the idea behind this, the stealable idea, is bring these entrepreneurs into your company. Have them try new things. Because those ideas are really powerful. They can be really valuable. All right, last trend, obsessive productivity. The idea that because technology can help us be more productive in every moment, we now expect that to happen. One of my favorite websites is Coffeetivity, which is a website that simulates the sound of a coffee shop without actually going to a coffee shop. So if you happen to be working from home or remotely and you just need a little bit of noise in the background, but music is too distracting, this is a great website to be able to get that sort of noise through a coffee shop simulated without having to do anything or go anywhere. So I really, really love it. A lot of the book was written listening to this because it's great for the background. Right. There's emails where they're curated emails. So they say, here's what you should pay attention to. Every week they send out a curated email. My email every week does the same thing. It says, here are 5 interesting stories that you might have missed. And they all go out in one email. And now instead of trying to read everything, you can maximize your productivity because you get an email like that every week. Right? These are tracking devices that follow you around, either to take photos of you, or here's a new one, a carry-on suitcase that will follow you based on your phone. So you can walk through the airport and your suitcase is following you. Right? Funny, but interesting that we have these things that can follow us around now. We have all of these apps that can save us time to help us win a parking ticket, track our pizza when it's being delivered to us, wait on the phone for us on an 800 number so that we don't have to wait, and then tell us when our turn is up so that we can save our time. There's products that are all connected to the internet, smart water bottles, life logging cameras, smart barcode scanners. I mean, all of these gadgets come out every year. At CES, every year in January, we go and we bring people to CES and we show them all of these new technologies that are coming out years sometimes before they're coming, right? We do tours of CES every year and show them stuff like this because these are the things that are coming. These are the things that are happening. And we want to be on top of that. Some of these things have what's called zero UI now, which is a whole movement in user interface design to say, why should we have to set things up with an app or a phone? Why can't we just talk to it and set it up? Why can't devices be that smart? Yves Behar, world-famous industrial designer, is working with a group called August to create a smart lock. Right? So you know these locks where you can put it on your house and then you press the app and they unlock the door? Well, he's working on the next version of that. And the next version is that the smart lock's on your door and your phone is in your pocket, and as you walk up to the door, your door knows that you're coming and it unlocks itself. So you just walk in. Well, because why should I have to take my phone out of my pocket, open up the app, press the unlock button, and then walk into my house? If I'm going to have all of that technology, why can't it just know that I'm coming and open my door for me? Right? That's how obsessed I am with my productivity, that I can't possibly waste my time bringing my phone out and swiping to open the app. It has to do it for me. That's the mentality that people have. So when somebody has that sort of mentality, when they have those sorts of experiences, how happy do you think they'll be waiting on the phone to talk to your customer service people? Or waiting in line to buy something from your retail establishment? Or waiting to get the white paper that you promised them when they filled out their email address, even if they have to wait 10 minutes? They want it right now. Everything has to be delivered right now because that's the obsession. So we have to promise and deliver speed. So the last thing that I promised you was to tell you how to do this for yourself. And I'm going to leave you with 5 specific habits. And then the last slide is going to be the perfect one to test the technique that I just shared with you, which is taking a photo of the slide. So the last slide I'm going to leave up there so that you can take a photo of it, and that will be the distillation of the entire talk. So even if you didn't write down a single thing today, you can get the whole point of being a trend curator with that one slide that you can take a photo of at the end. So it'll be very easy. If you need to justify why you came to somebody else in your organization, you can say, yeah, this is what we talked about, as if you were listening the whole time, right? So I'm going to make it easy for you. So the first habit is be observant. See the things that other people don't see. I was at a dinner event, and I noticed that the waiter was putting spoons at the top or the side of your plate, depending on what you ordered, so that the other waiters would know where the food was going to be delivered. I started calling that spoon code. That was the secret code that they used. Now, knowing that there's a spoon code at restaurants isn't going to change your life. But noticing details like that helps you see the patterns that other people don't see. Because all sorts of systems around us work based on those patterns. And the reason why people see trends or don't see trends is because they train themselves to be observant. So the people who see trends and who notice details are the ones that are speed understanders, like Isaac Asimov said. The ones who don't are the ones who are walking down the street like this, making sure that they get the last text message out until they finally make it to where they're trying to go, right? We know those people. We are those people sometimes, right? Maybe you don't want to raise your hand and admit it, but that person has their head down. The observant person has their head up. So pick your head up, first tip. Second tip, be curious. One of my favorite things to do when I'm traveling through airports is buy magazines that are clearly not meant for me. So I've purchased Modern Farmer magazine. I've purchased Hispanic Mother magazine. I've purchased Teenage Girl magazine. I've purchased Inked magazine, which is a magazine for people with tattoos. I don't have a tattoo. I've purchased motorcycle riding magazines. I've purchased sailing magazines. I've never been on a motorcycle. I've never gone sailing. And the reason why I buy all of these magazines that are clearly not for me is because I challenge myself to learn about someone different. I see a world that I'm not part of. I see the advertising that's targeting people from that world that I'm not part of. And I learn something different each time I pick up one of those magazines. It doesn't cost a lot of money. We can all do that, whether you're traveling or you happen to be in a bookstore or you just subscribe or you just pick up a magazine from somebody else who lives in your house who subscribed to a magazine you would ordinarily never open. Just pick it up. Because what ends up happening is you give yourself a chance to step outside of your shoes and into somebody else's shoes. And the way that media is delivered to us right now, it is very easy to only read the stuff that you agree with, right? It's very easy for me to go on Facebook and see lots of people who can't believe what happened this week in the US with who got elected, right? Very easy for me to see that because I see stuff that are from my friends who think like I do. It's very difficult for me to see something from someone who has a different perspective because I don't get that delivered to me through Facebook's algorithm, right? Facebook's algorithm doesn't deliver something and say, hey, you might disagree with this. We think you'll be interested. That's not how the algorithm works, right? So you have to force yourself to see things outside of your perspective. And magazines are a great way to do that. Third tip, be fickle. Fickle is an interesting word because fickle means that you only pay attention to something for a short amount of time and then you leave it. You go to something else. And usually, when this word is used, it's not used in a positive sense. It's used in a negative sense. Oh, that person's fickle. They can't pay attention to something for a long period of time. They get distracted too easily, and now they have to move on to something else. But when you think about ideas, sometimes the meaning of an idea is not immediately apparent. Remember, it's like the frequent flyer miles, right? So you have to be fickle, otherwise you'll sit there thinking about it too long and you won't see the significance of it. So the reason I take notes with Sharpies, and I don't know if you have Sharpies here. Can you buy Sharpies here? No? Okay, so it's like a thick pen, right? That's what a Sharpie is. So the reason I take notes with this thick pen is because, firstly, it's easy to see what I've written. It's like a marker. And secondly, because it's so thick, it forces me to write less words. So unlike my notebook here, where I can write things very, very small, and it takes me like I have to almost use a magnifying glass to see it because this is the size of the handwriting, right? A marker written on an article that's saved is much bigger, and so therefore, I can only capture the biggest ideas. And that's highly valuable for me. So the third thing is capture ideas, move on to the next thing. Fourth tip, be thoughtful. Being thoughtful means waiting a moment. If you've ever had that moment of inspiration on something you've been struggling with when you go and take a shower, or when you go to the car, or when you do something else, it's not because your car is magic, it's not because your shower is magic, unfortunately. It's because you gave yourself some time to be away from the problem. And so therefore you gave your brain a chance to reset. And there's a lot of brain science behind why that happens. So giving yourself a chance to be thoughtful is the way to solve problems. If you're dealing with a mental problem that you can't solve. The way to not solve the problem is to sit there in a room until you work out the solution. To stick yourself in it deeper and deeper and deeper. You won't come up with the solution that way. That's not how the human brain works. And there's lots of research that shows that. The last tip is be elegant. Being elegant means choosing words specifically. It means simplifying. This was the original business plan for a US airline. Some would argue the only good US airline. You have many good airlines in the Middle East. We do not have that. We have many bad airlines that deliver bad service and bad everything. But Southwest Airlines is one of the ones that a lot of people like. And this was the original plan for Southwest Airlines. The founder of Southwest Airlines 4 decades ago says, I'm going to create an airline that flies directly between these 3 cities because that doesn't exist. And I believe there's enough people who want to go directly between these cities without stopping over somewhere else that that's enough of a profitable plan. Can you imagine a more elegant business plan than that? Buy the airplanes, fly between these 3 places, don't crash. That's our business, right? Maybe deliver some good customer service and buy some peanuts and give those to people, right? That's it. Could your business plan be that simplified for your next effort, for your next product? What if it could be? This is the challenge. This is where we want to go. So now we're up to the slide, the one that I told you to take a photo of. This is the 5 habits of trend curators, all right? This is the one slide that will tell you the things that you need to remember to do if you're going to be able to predict the future. This is the secret. This is the one single slide. Be observant. See things like the spoon code. Be curious. Buy magazines that aren't targeted towards you. Be fickle. Save ideas for later digestion. Be thoughtful. Take time to think, whether it's in the shower, the car, or just in a different room. And be elegant. Describe things in simple ways. Those are the 5 keys. If you can do those 5 things, you can train yourself to be a trend curator. You can see what other people don't see. And you can, yes, learn to predict the future. Thank you.
With that, I would like to thank you for attending this event. And remember, we have more events. So tomorrow, we'll also have Rohit speak about economics. And following that, we will have the third night will be with Parish and talking about lifters. So we hope to see you in the next two nights. And thank you very much.